All right, let's dive into this Neuralink stuff. Seems like everyone's buzzing about it. You guys send over a mountain of articles, videos, interviews, the works. Elon Musk talking about the future, even the first human with a Neuralink implant, Noland Arbaugh. So, what could this mean for, well, for you and me? That's what we're going to unpack.
Yeah, no doubt it's caught everyone's attention. I think it's because, this isn't just theory anymore. We're actually seeing it in a person, a real person.
Yeah.
And that just opens up so many possibilities.
Absolutely. It's like, controlling a computer with your mind. That's something straight out of a sci-fi movie, right?
Really.
But before we get too ahead of ourselves,
Mhm.
can you break down how this thing actually works? What exactly is a brain-computer interface?
Okay, so a brain-computer interface, or BCI, basically it's a way for your brain to talk directly to a computer. Think of your brain as a city, right, with all these electrical signals rushing around like cars. A BCI is like tapping into that network, reading those signals, maybe even sending signals back.
Hmm. Okay, so like a tiny listening device planted in your brain.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Neuralink uses these super thin threads, way thinner than hair, with tiny electrodes on them. They implant these threads in your brain, and the electrodes pick up the electrical activity from nearby neurons.
Wow, so we're talking about eavesdropping on brain cells talking to each other. That's wild. But how do they make sense of all those electrical signals? I mean, it's got to be an insane amount of data.
Yeah, that's the really amazing part. Neuralink doesn't just record the signals, it decodes them too. They've got these sophisticated algorithms, think of them like translators. They can interpret the activity patterns and figure out what they mean.
So if I'm thinking about moving my arm, the algorithm can recognize that.
Exactly. And then it translates that thought into a command for the computer, like moving a cursor or maybe even controlling a robotic arm.
Okay, starting to get it now. But how does the information actually travel from my brain to the computer? Is there like a wire sticking out of my head?
Nope. No wires, thankfully. The threads connect to this tiny device, like the size of a quarter, implanted in your skull. It processes the signals and sends them wirelessly to a computer or smartphone.
Bluetooth to the brain. That's pretty incredible. But I got to admit, the whole idea of something implanted in my brain, it's a lot to take in.
Totally understandable. It's definitely a big step. And it's important to think about all the implications, both good and bad.
And that's exactly what we're going to do in this deep dive. It's not just about the tech itself, but what it could mean for all of us, for our lives, for the future, everything.
Absolutely. And I think the best way to really grasp that is to hear from someone who's living it. Let's talk about Noland Arbaugh.
Yes, Nolan's story is just mind-blowing. He's the first person ever to get a Neuralink implant.
Yeah, and what's fascinating is that he volunteered for it. He wanted to be a part of this, even with the risks.
And from everything I've read, he seems incredibly positive, determined, even after such a life-changing injury.
Yeah, his attitude is amazing. He approaches this whole thing with a sense of wonder.
He even described it as waking up in a video game. I mean, how cool is that?
That's a powerful way to put it. He's in a new reality where his thoughts control digital things.
It's like a whole new world opening up. And what's even more incredible is that he's not just a patient. He's working with the Neuralink team to make it better.
Exactly. He's giving them feedback on how it feels to use, helping them refine the software, making it more intuitive.
I love that. It's a real collaboration, not just about the tech, but about the human experience.
Yeah, and that's crucial for making sure this technology develops responsibly.
Okay, so let's dig a little deeper into Nolan's experience. You mentioned he calls it digital telepathy. What does he mean by that?
So, one of the things he can do is control a cursor on a screen, just with his thoughts.
Wait, he's moving a cursor with his mind. How?
It goes back to those decoding algorithms we talked about. The system picks up the brain activity for intending to move the cursor.
So it's not like magic or something. It's still based on signals and software, right?
Right, exactly. But from Nolan's perspective, it feels seamless. He thinks about moving the cursor, and it moves.
I can see why he calls it digital telepathy. It's like a whole new way to communicate.
And that's what makes this so revolutionary. It could completely change how we interact with the world.
It's both exciting and a little bit scary, isn't it?
Totally. It makes you think about what it means to be human, about the future of consciousness, all these big questions.
So where do we go from here? What's next for Neuralink? What can we expect in the coming years?
Well, right now they're focused on medical applications, especially for people with severe disabilities. The goal is to help them regain movement, control prosthetic limbs, things like that.
And they're doing this through rigorous testing and research, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Lots of preclinical trials with animals to make sure it's safe.
And what about the actual implant procedure? It sounds incredibly delicate.
It is. It is. They've actually developed a robotic surgeon to do it. It's designed to be super precise, minimizing any risk of damage.
That makes sense. I imagine any bleeding or trauma during surgery could be really bad.
Exactly. And that's another reason why they're using these flexible threads. They're much less likely to cause damage than traditional electrodes.
So they're being really careful to ensure safety.
Absolutely. They're also doing long-term studies to monitor for any side effects.
That's good to hear because let's be honest, the thought of something being implanted in your brain, it's a little scary. Concerns about rejection, long-term health risks, all that.
Yeah, I get it. Those are valid concerns. But it's still early days, and they're committed to addressing those issues through research.
That's reassuring because the potential benefits are huge. You can't ignore that. Imagine helping people walk again or giving sight back to the blind.
It's groundbreaking stuff.
It really is.
And it's just the beginning. Elon Musk has even talked about using Neuralink to enhance human capabilities, taking us beyond what we can even imagine right now.
Okay, now that's getting into some serious future territory. What kind of enhancements are we talking about?
He's mentioned things like accelerated learning, telepathic communication, even merging with AI.
Whoa. Okay, hold on. That's a lot to unpack. Let's start with accelerated learning. What does that even mean?
Well, imagine downloading information straight to your brain. No more traditional learning. You could master a skill in a fraction of the time.
That sounds incredible, but wouldn't it take away from the joy of learning, the satisfaction of struggling and finally getting it?
That's a great point. It definitely makes you question what learning really means and how technology might change our relationship with knowledge.
And what about telepathic communication? Is that even scientifically possible?
We're not quite there yet, but it's theoretically possible. If we can decode the signals for thoughts and emotions, we might be able to send them directly to another person's brain.
So instead of saying, I love you, you could just think it and the other person would feel it. That's both amazing and a little creepy.
Right. It raises all sorts of questions about privacy and communication.
And then there's the whole merging with AI thing. That sounds straight out of science fiction.
It does, but Elon Musk seems to think it's a real possibility. He even believes it might be necessary for humanity's survival.
Okay, I'm going to need a little more explanation on that one. But for now, let's focus on the more immediate applications. We've talked about the tech and the benefits, but what about the ethics?
That's a crucial part of this conversation. We need to think about the potential risks, the unintended consequences.
Like, what happens to privacy when our thoughts aren't private anymore? Or who gets to decide what enhancements are okay?
Exactly. These are complex issues that we need to grapple with. There are no easy answers, but we need to start talking about them.
Absolutely. And that's a good place to take a break, I think. We've covered a lot of ground already.
I have.
Learned about Neuralink, heard about Noland's incredible experience, and started to explore some of the bigger ethical questions.
Yeah, and next time, we'll dive even deeper into those implications, the benefits, the risks, and what the future might hold for all of us.
Can't wait. This is fascinating stuff. So stick around for part 2 of our deep dive into Neuralink, where we'll explore what this game-changing technology could mean for the world. Welcome back. So we ended on some pretty futuristic stuff, accelerated learning, telepathic communication. But before we get too carried away, I think it's important to remember this tech is still in its early stages.
Right, exactly. What we're seeing with Noland is amazing, but it's just one person, and the tech is still being developed.
Yeah, for sure. And while there are huge potential benefits, there are also some serious challenges, even risks. So let's talk about those. What are some of the big ones?
Well, I think one of the biggest is just how complex the brain is. Billions of neurons firing and all these intricate patterns, just decoding those and figuring out what they mean. It's a massive task.
That makes sense. It's not like we fully understand the brain ourselves.
Right. And even if we can decode the patterns, there's the question of how to safely interact with the brain. We don't want to cause any unintended harm.
Definitely. And then there's the ethical questions, like we talked about before. Privacy, autonomy, the potential for misuse.
Absolutely. Those are all important things to consider.
So let's unpack those a bit more, starting with privacy. If Neuralink can read our brain signals, does that mean our thoughts aren't private anymore?
It's a valid concern, and Neuralink is taking it seriously. They're working on things like encryption, data security, trying to build in safeguards to protect user privacy.
But even with those safeguards, it's still kind of freaky to think about.
I understand it's a big shift in how we think about privacy. But with any technology, there are trade-offs. We have to weigh the potential benefits against the potential risks.
Okay, that's true. So what about autonomy? If Neuralink can influence brain activity, could we lose control of our own thoughts and actions?
That's a really deep question. It gets into philosophy, you know. Free will, consciousness, all that.
Okay, well, I'm up for a good philosophical debate sometime. But can you give me a more concrete example? How might this play out in real life?
Sure, so imagine Neuralink being used to treat depression, right? It's possible it could regulate mood, even suppress certain thoughts.
I see. That could be helpful for people struggling with mental health.
Mm-hmm.
But then who gets to decide what's normal thinking?
Exactly. That's the slippery slope. We have to be extremely careful. We don't want people being forced to think or feel a certain way.
So it sounds like there's a lot of responsibility here.
There is, for everyone involved, scientists, policymakers, the public. We need to talk openly about these challenges.
Okay, so we've got privacy, autonomy. What about misuse? Could Neuralink be used for harmful purposes?
It's definitely a possibility. Any technology that can interface with the brain could be misused. Imagine someone hacking into a Neuralink device, controlling someone else's actions.
That's a terrifying thought.
Yeah, it's like something out of a dystopian movie. But it's important to remember that's just a hypothetical. Neuralink is working on security measures to prevent that kind of thing.
What kind of security measures?
Encryption, firewalls, multi-factor authentication, they're trying to make it as secure as possible.
That's good to hear. But there's still some risk, right?
There's always some risk with new technology. It's about weighing those risks against the potential benefits. And with Neuralink, those benefits could be huge.
Yeah, you're right. Like helping paralyzed people walk again, giving sight back to the blind.
Those are game changers.
Absolutely.
And it goes beyond just medical applications. Neuralink could enhance human capabilities in ways we haven't even thought of yet.
Okay, let's get back to those futuristic ideas. Accelerated learning, telepathy, merging with AI.
Right, it's mind-blowing stuff. But remember, these are possibilities, not guarantees.
So with accelerated learning, how would that work?
Well, one idea is to directly input information into the brain, bypassing traditional learning altogether.
So like instead of reading a book, I could just download the information.
Exactly. Instant knowledge, basically.
But would it feel the same? Would I really understand it the same way?
That's a good question. We don't really know the answer yet. It's possible the experience would be different, but maybe not.
Interesting. What about telepathic communication? Could Neuralink really make that happen?
It's possible if we can decode the signals for thoughts and emotions, we could transmit those to someone else's brain.
So I could just think something and someone else would receive it.
In theory, yes, a whole new form of communication.
But wouldn't that be a huge invasion of privacy?
That's a big concern, and we'd need to address it carefully. Safeguards would be crucial.
Definitely. And then there's merging with AI, the most far-out idea of all.
It does seem like science fiction, but Elon Musk is serious about it. He thinks it might be necessary for humanity's survival.
Okay, I'm still not quite getting that one.
Well, the idea is if we merge our brains with AI, we could become super intelligent ourselves, accessing all that knowledge, that processing power.
So like becoming cyborgs, but with our minds instead of our bodies.
Sort of, yeah, it would change what it means to be human.
Okay, my brain is officially overloaded. We've covered so much, the tech, the ethics, the future.
There's a lot to take in.
But it's fascinating stuff. Where do we go from here?
Well, Neuralink is working towards FDA approval for their first human trial. That's a big step towards wider use of the technology.
So things are moving quickly.
They are, and it's important to stay informed, be part of the conversation. This technology could change the world, and we need to make sure it's for the better.
That's a great point, and a good place to pause for now. We'll continue our deep dive into Neuralink next time, exploring the future of this game-changing tech and what it could mean for all of us. Welcome back to our deep dive on Neuralink. You know, we've talked about the tech, the potential, the ethics, but I think Noland's story really brings it all home.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? It's pretty amazing, his journey. I mean, to go from being so active to facing quadriplegia and then becoming the first Neuralink recipient.
It's inspiring. You know, he talked about his faith, his family, how they helped him through it all. It would have been so easy to just give up.
Right, but he didn't. He even saw it as a test, an opportunity for growth.
Yeah, and he talked about those hours spent trying to regain movement, even when doctors said it was unlikely.
And it's that determination that led him to Neuralink. He saw it as a chance to push boundaries.
He's so open about the whole experience, the pain, the emotional ups and downs.
And yet he's still so positive.
He talked about adapting, finding joy in the small things, focusing on what he could control.
I remember that story he shared about a woman regaining movement in her finger after 18 years.
Yeah, that was incredible.
His message is clear: never give up hope. The human body can do amazing things.
And that hope is what drove him to the Neuralink trial. He knew the risks, but he saw the potential.
He even described that moment he realized he could control the cursor with his thoughts. He called it digital telepathy.
He was so excited about it.
Yeah, like waking up in a video game, discovering these new abilities.
He even joked about getting addicted to WebGrid because of Neuralink.
That's awesome. He's not just a patient, he's a pioneer.
And he's giving the Neuralink team valuable feedback, helping them improve the whole user experience.
Oh yeah, he's working closely with them, suggesting improvements to the app, the calibration.
It's a real collaboration.
It is. He's helping shape the future of this technology.
But it wasn't all easy. He talked about the challenges too, like the signal degrading, the frustration of adapting to a new way of doing things.
Right, he had to work through those hurdles with the Neuralink team.
Especially with Bliss Chapman, the software lead.
Oh yeah, Bliss seems amazing, so passionate about making this work for people like Noland.
She really emphasized the importance of user experience, making it intuitive and seamless.
She compared it to building a race car, giving the user that sense of control and responsiveness.
It's great to see that level of dedication.
It is. She's really committed to making this tech accessible and user-friendly.
And despite the challenges, Nolan's still optimistic about the future of Neuralink.
Yeah, he believes it could revolutionize how we treat all sorts of conditions. Paralysis, blindness, even mental health issues.
He even talked about controlling robotic limbs, maybe even entire robots, just with his thoughts.
It's mind-blowing. The possibilities are endless.
It really is. And it's a future full of both promise and uncertainty.
Yeah, but Nolan's story gives us hope. Hope that we can use this tech for good.
To create a world that's more accessible, more inclusive for everyone.
Absolutely.
It's been a wild ride exploring Neuralink, the science, the potential, the ethical questions.
And at the heart of it all is Nolan's story.
A story of resilience, hope, and the incredible power of the human spirit. So after this deep dive, what are you thinking? Excited about the possibilities, maybe a little apprehensive about the implications? Whatever you're feeling, the important thing is to keep asking questions, stay informed, and be part of the conversation. Thanks for joining us on this journey into the world of Neuralink.